time, baby. Now let's sell this thing. I want the Rumble in the Langley, the Thriller at Villa. Give me them names again.
Arsenal v Manchester United.
It don't need no Don. The FA Cup semi-final. Arsenal v Manchester United. Saturday, 11:45.
This is BBC One Southwest. Now the news presented by Fiona Bruce with Caris Edwards.
New allegations that migrants from Eastern Europe are secretly being allowed into Britain without proper checks. The claims by a consul official in Bucharest increased the pressure on the beleaguered immigration minister. With the official suspended tonight and more calls for the minister's resignation, we'll be investigating a deepening political row. Also tonight, plans for a new elite police force to crack down on organised crime. The actor, writer and director Peter Ustinov has died, aged 82. And Ian Duncan Smith is cleared of any wrongdoing in employing his wife as a secretary. And here in the southwest, on the seabed, HMS Scylla now ready for exploration. And anger and disappointment as a centre for the blind prepares to close. Good evening. An official of the British consul in Bucharest has been suspended after alleging that UK immigration officials are allowing Romanians and Bulgarians into Britain on forged documents. The official made the claims in an email which he sent to the Conservative Party. In it, he said the current row over immigration checks had uncovered just the tip of the iceberg. The Immigration Minister, Beverly Hughes, is already under pressure over allegations that she approved a policy to allow thousands of immigrants into Britain with minimal checks. Tonight she said she took the new claims seriously and that they would be investigated.
Here in Romania, as well as Bulgaria, they're waiting in line to join the European Union. But a British immigration official in Bucharest, James Cameron, claims that people have been allowed into Britain without any checks, even when diplomats warn their papers are bogus. This whistleblower has been suspended for emailing the Shadow Home Secretary, claiming, "You have only uncovered the tip of the iceberg," saying when officials state clearly that the application is being supported with forged and counterfeit documents, the letters are ignored and the European Community Association Agreement applications are still being issued.
That, frankly, is disgraceful. It is a deliberate flouting of the rules that ought to control immigration into this country. And what's even worse, actually, I understand, is that from March the 1st, the policy is that the applications won't even go through the embassy. They'll go straight to Sheffield or wherever. And since very few people there can read Romanian, they will not have any idea whether the documents are false or not.
The Conservatives were already calling for the Immigration Minister to resign. Beverly Hughes' troubles started when a whistleblower from the Sheffield Immigration Service, Steve Moxon, revealed that no checks were being carried out on people from countries due to join the European Union in May. She denied all knowledge and ordered an inquiry which has since cleared ministers. But after more leaks, the government's admitted authorising fast-tracking separate applications to clear backlogs. Tonight, Ms Hughes told me she found these new claims hard to believe.
I'd be surprised that an official with those level of concerns has not brought them up through the proper channels at an earlier stage than now. And clearly they do need to be examined, and in terms of the overhaul of the system that I've ordered, they will be examined.
The Conservatives say the immigration procedure is in chaos and you should resign.
Well, I've no intention of resigning and giving the Tories that satisfaction, and that's because I have nothing to resign for. I've been completely open. I have a completely clear conscience.
When it comes to debates about illegal immigration, the government's instincts are torn. While ministers might mutter that right-wing newspapers are stirring up the issue for their own ends, they also say that voters are right to be concerned about unauthorised people coming into the country. It's traditionally a bad subject for Labour, and it's not getting any better. Mark Mardell, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's talk to Mark Mardell now at Westminster. Mark, this row's been going on for over a week now. How serious are these latest claims?
Oh, I think if they are true, and I've got no way of proving that they are, but if they are true, they're the most serious by far. If you think, I mean, when you go back to what was said about Sheffield in the first place, it really was a row about whether these people were being allowed in a bit early, a couple of months before their countries joined the European Union. This is talking about countries that aren't about to join the European Union, and really people tricking their way into the country, and officials here turning a blind eye to it. So it's very serious anyway, but I think what makes it all the more embarrassing for the government is they've already had a big investigation into this office. I've read it. It's full of nearly impenetrable bureaucratic language, but it doesn't say anything about this. It hasn't got to the bottom of the matter if this is true.
And what about Beverly Hughes, the immigration minister, calls for her to resign again? What does all this mean for her?
Michael Howard, the Conservative leader, said she should go today. He said the whole thing was a shambles, and that pressure is going to get much worse because the Conservatives are holding a special debate on this matter. They've forced it into the House of Commons tomorrow, and the Home Secretary himself is going to be there to face the music. But I've never heard a Cabinet Minister, David Blunkett, defend his junior quite so fulsomely, really saying that she's got the most difficult job outside Cabinet and she's not going to go. The government has clearly determined they're not going to get, nobody's going to get her scalp on this one.
Okay, Mark, thanks very much. Plans for a new elite police force to tackle organised crime have been announced by the Home Secretary. The new agency would go after the criminal gangs who cost Britain £40 billion a year. Other proposals include a new system of supergrasses, where criminals who inform on their bosses could receive more lenient sentences.
Organised crime has become a billion-pound industry. This latest all the remnants of a forgery factory. But whether it's passport or credit card fraud or drugs or people smuggling, international crime gangs have infiltrated the UK as never before. All too often it's only the foot soldiers who get caught while the big bosses go free. Today ministers announced tougher laws and a national policing plan to deal with it.
We are setting a clear objective, year-on-year reduction in the harm organised crime causes the United Kingdom and its citizens. We will make the UK one of the most difficult environments in the world for organised crime.
The fight against organised crime will be led by an FBI-style organised crime agency. They'll have new powers to use phone tap and other surveillance evidence in court. It's likely there'll be a formal witness protection programme and reduced sentences or even immunity for criminals who turn supergrass and give evidence against their own gangs. The idea of allowing supergrass evidence is perhaps the most controversial. Persuading one hardened criminal to give evidence against another brings a raft of ethical and legal problems. Not least, how do you persuade a judge and jury to believe what he says?
There are concerns about the reliability of grasses, and there are concerns about the victims who would see a reduction in the perpetrator's sentence. But we know that a certain amount of this goes on.
The plan is to enshrine a new supergrass deal in law, though in the past the courts have often rejected this type of evidence. Raids like this on drug suspects in Bristol are only part of the solution. Ministers want tougher measures and with a new urgency. That's because they believe some terrorist groups are also being funded through organised criminal activity. Margaret Gilmore, BBC News.
3 British soldiers have been injured as they try to evict squatters from a government building in the southern Iraqi city of Basra. The troops, wearing riot gear, came under a barrage of stones before using batons to subdue their attackers. A man wrestled an assault rifle from one of the soldiers, but his colleagues managed to recover the weapon. One Iraqi was wounded in the head by a rubber bullet fired by British troops. Sir Peter Ustinov, Oscar-winning actor, tireless ambassador for the United Nations charity UNICEF, and internationally loved raconteur, has died, aged 82. Colleagues from the stage and screen today paid tribute to the talents of the actor, director and writer. And the UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan called him a remarkable world citizen. Nick Higham looks back on his life.
Upbraided before the whole school by...
Telling stories was what Peter Ustinov did best. At school, they'd thought him too clever by half, as one report revealed.
It was written by the headmaster, who said, "He shows great originality, which must be curbed at all costs."
To hear him in cabaret or to hear him speak after dinner speaker or something was an absolute joy, because he was a superb raconteur. I mean, absolutely superb. Never vicious. His humour was never cruel, because he was too gentle a person in many ways.
He'd been born in London of German, Russian, French, Swiss, Italian and Ethiopian ancestry, and he spoke 6 languages. He was a success by the time he was 20. One of his first films was The Way Ahead in 1944.
Je veux qu'on m'affiche la paix. He's a pacifist.
His acting career was to last more than 60 years. In the Hollywood epic Spartacus, he won the first of 2 Oscars, but he was philosophical about awards.
It's always rather sad the moment you get an award because you think to yourself, what happens next? I always think of that when I see people winning Wimbledon that weren't supposed to. It's a great moment, and then a certain melancholy is bound to set in when they lose in the first round of a small competition somewhere.
That didn't happen to Ustinov, who stayed at the top of his game. In 1978, he played Agatha Christie's Belgian sleuth Hercule Poirot.
Lucky? With me, it's the exercise of the little grey cells. Luck, I leave to the others.
He may have been a man of immense culture, but the children he worked with as a UN ambassador liked him because he was funny.
I think his greatest talent was the ability to communicate on behalf of those less fortunate than he. He was a wonderful spokesperson for children. This is not taking away from his ability as a playwright or as a director or as an actor or as a mimic. All of these things he used to put forward the case for children.
He directed plays and operas, appeared on television, wrote books. In Europe, they revered him as an intellectual. In Britain, we'll remember him because he made us laugh.
Well, then it was time for me to go to school for the first time. I remember it vividly. School in London, I was 6 years old. There was a large oleograph on the wall of the classroom of Jesus Christ holding a Boy Scout by the hand. And with the other available hand pointing out to the Boy Scout the extent of the British Empire on the map. Put it down to my foreign background, if you will, but I was pretty skeptical from the start.
Sir Peter Ustinov, who's died in Switzerland, aged 82. The former Conservative leader, Ian Duncan Smith, has been cleared of any wrongdoing in employing his wife as a secretary. A House of Commons committee rejected claims that she hadn't done enough work to justify her salary. Andrew Marr has the details.
The main charge was that he used public money to pay her for work she didn't do. Serious. And, says the parliamentary watchdog, not true.
I'm immensely pleased today to be able to say to you all that we stand before you cleared of those allegations that were made all those months ago.
The report does talk of a misunderstanding about which pots of money should fund his office staff, but it was the attack on his wife Betsy's employment that really hit home. She never speaks in public. She did this afternoon.
We always said we'd be cleared of these allegations, and today we have been cleared. But the last 6 months have been horrendous. Horrendous for my husband, horrendous for me, and horrendous for our family. We want to put the terrible times behind us.
Now some MPs want the party to confront 2 Tory candidates who backed the original allegations. Last autumn, the wolves were circling round Mr. Duncan Smith. At the Blackpool Party conference, there was constant plotting in the corridors. And as the so-called Betsygate allegations surfaced in newspapers, he became convinced that this was attempted political assassination.
These cowards have gone after my wife as a way of getting to me, and I think it is intolerable, absolutely intolerable.
But the journalist who first pursued the story for Newsnight, the BBC decided not to air it, today defended his right to ask how public funds had been spent.
Any decent journalist who had been approached by the people who approached me with allegations as serious as those would have been negligent, grossly negligent in their duties, not to have pursued those complaints and not to have taken them further.
As for Mr. Duncan Smith, he has won this battle. Unfortunately for him, only after he'd already lost his war.
And here's the big question. If it wasn't for Betsygate, might Ian Duncan Smith still be Tory leader today? Short answer is possibly yes. Lots of people did want to get rid of him, but this was the pebble which started the landslide. Andrew Marr, BBC News, outside Conservative Central Office.
Tony Blair has told the House of Commons that a new European constitution would be right for Europe and right for Britain. The Prime Minister was reporting back to MPs on last week's European summit when the deadline of June was set to agree the deal. But the Conservative leader, Michael Howard, said the government was trying to bounce Britain into the Constitution and called again for a referendum. And still to come on tonight's programme, the Boyd races that are sending the number of deaths among bikers soaring. Day one in Ireland of the ban that's sending the smokers out into the cold. Seven former communist countries have officially joined NATO this evening. Within the last hour, the leaders of the new countries were welcomed into the alliance at a special ceremony at the White House. The new members are Bulgaria, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Romania, Slovakia and Slovenia. And still in Washington, there's a growing row over whether the U.S. National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, should testify before the committee investigating the September the 11th attacks. She said today she had nothing to hide, but as a serving advisor could not testify in public. Let's talk to Matt Fry in Washington. Matt, she says she can't testify in public, but that didn't stop her talking today on U.S. television, did it?
Yes, she has spent quite a lot of time on television, Fiona, and that's exactly what the critics are saying. Now, the White House response is this. She can't possibly testify in public because that would set an unwelcome precedent. National security advisors are not supposed to do that because it might compromise national security, etc., etc., etc. To be honest, none of these very legalistic arguments ring terribly true with the public. The opinion polls indicate that they do want her to testify. The families of the victims of 9/11 want her to testify. And even many Republicans are now saying, don't be so legalistic, put that woman on the chair under oath in public and set the record straight once for all.
So Matt, how serious is all this for her and for the presidency?
Well, it's not looking good for her, but more importantly, the question is how badly does it look for the president? And again, I go to the opinion polls. They indicate that she has lost, or rather he has lost, quite a lot of support, between 5 and 10% amongst the public on questions of trust, and also on that one card that he's strongest on, which is his fight against terror, his stand on national security. And now this is pretty serious stuff because this is, after all, an election year, and there must be some people in the White House who are wondering whether the tactic of tackling Richard Clarke, the man who made the accusation that the president wasn't really interested in al-Qaeda before 9/11 and was too interested, obsessive almost, about Iraq, whether those tactics have now backfired because the attacks against him have been pretty personal. It makes them look almost too bitchy and vindictive. But on the other hand, you might say, well, by focusing on Richard Clarke, they've actually managed to get away from the big question, which is whether they really didn't do enough. And of course, the bigger point here is that most Americans don't really care so much about what happened before 9/11 because that was such a calamitous event, but they really care about whether the war against Iraq, the occupation there, is undermining the current war against terror.
Okay, Matt, thanks very much. A woman from West Yorkshire has pleaded guilty to deception charges after offering to sell her unborn baby on the internet 3 times over. Moira Greenslade received thousands of pounds after making deals to sell the child to 3 separate couples. Catherine Marston reports.
Moira Greenslade put an advert on the internet. It offered her unborn baby for adoption for money. A couple from Scotland began paying her, hoping the baby would be theirs. But Moira Greenslade then promised 2 other couples they could have her baby. Even before the birth, the con had made her £2,500. The couples had responded to an advert she'd put on surrogacy websites. She knew it would attract couples desperate for a baby.
Moira Greenslade originally offered herself as a surrogate mother on the internet, and that's not illegal. But in the end, her baby had no biological connection with any of the couples. She was simply selling her own child for adoption on the internet, and that's breaking the law.
The baby was born in this hospital in Southampton last December, but by then Moira Greenslade had changed her mind and pulled out of the agreement. The couples realised they'd been tricked. The police were called in and Moira Greenslade was arrested.
These people have been through an awful ordeal in terms of trying to adopt and trying to undertake IVF treatment anyway, and this just compounds the agony.
And the court was told for that reason this is an unusual and complex case.
It is one thing for a person who's the biological parent of a child to care for that child and become the child's legal parent through adoption. It's quite another to try and make money through this. Private adoptions in this case, in this way, would be entirely illegal.
The baby girl's now in care. Moira Greenslade could be jailed for up to 10 years. Catherine Marston, BBC News, Bingley.
More than 100,000 phones in Manchester were cut off after a fire in an underground tunnel early this morning. The ambulance service was affected and had to use a mobile backup system. But 999 calls are working normally. Engineers are assessing the damage in the tunnel and are trying to reroute services. Police forces across Britain are launching campaigns to try to cut an alarming rise in deaths among motorcyclists. They say there's been a big increase in the number of accidents involving riders on powerful sports bikes, especially at weekends. Simon Montague joined hundreds of bikers for the traditional start of the motorcycling summer season.
Back on the road, the beginning of the biking summer season. Thousands heading for Silverstone. And bikes are becoming ever more popular, some for commuting, some for weekend thrills.
In the last few years, there's been a big rise in biking. The trouble is, what's come with it is a big rise in the number of bikers being injured or even killed.
In fact, many police forces are saying that the total numbers killed on their roads last year rose simply because of motorcyclists. They've come to watch their heroes, the speed and the spills, and for many, the sensation is what it's all about.
Freedom, the camaraderie. I mean, these are all people I've just met through biking, you know?
Oh, just the sheer adrenaline of it. Biking itself is just an amazing thing that I just can't explain in words.
But a few take it too far. Andrew Kitt strapped a camera to his tank and filmed himself doing up to 120 miles an hour. Police say weekend riders on powerful sports bikes are causing the rising death toll. This rider died 2 weeks later.
He overtook on a blind bend and he was killed outright. He was the sort of person who wanted to donate organs. He wanted to give his brother a kidney. But every part of his body was broken.
And back near Silverstone, Northamptonshire police say the number of bikers killed in the county almost doubled last year.
There's quite a high percentage of motorcyclists driving between 80 and 139 miles an hour in Northamptonshire, and that is a worry, and we need to try and do something about that.
But enforcing's only part of it. Tomorrow, the government launches this video aimed at getting into the psychology of sports bike riders. The message, if only real life gave warnings like this. But real life is this. Thousands of riders who enjoy weekends on bikes with thundering performance for a few £1,000s. Most do ride sensibly, but a growing number go sensation-seeking at a price that's far too high. Simon Montague, BBC News in Northamptonshire.
There's new evidence tonight that there could be some form of basic life on Mars. Scientists say they've discovered methane gas in the planet's atmosphere, which can be produced by bacteria. It was picked up by instruments on the Mars Express, the European Space Agency's probe, which is currently orbiting the red planet. Pubs and clubs across Ireland have been smoke-free this evening. The first night of the Republic's ban on smoking in any workplace is intended to protect people from passive smoking. So how's it gone down with the general public? From Dublin, Vicky Young reports.
Drinkers out in Dublin this evening were experiencing a different atmosphere in their local bars and pubs, and the smoke-free environment seemed to be going down well.
It's just a pleasure to come out and not have smoke blown in my face and to have my clothes reeking when I get home.
Well, the atmosphere is a lot better. I don't smoke, so I can actually breathe, which is a change.
But the special area set aside for smokers was proving even more popular.
Ireland's 1 million or so smokers have had a long time to prepare for this ban, but this evening they're having to get used to being out in the cold. Many of them say a drink and a cigarette go hand in hand, and it's not the government's job to tell them what to do.
In general, I'm not happy about it, because I feel like it's my choice if I want to smoke. You know, I think it would have been better if they had put, half the pub non-smoking, half the pub smoking,
Visitors from all over the world come to soak up the atmosphere in Dublin's bars and restaurants, but some fear that will change.
It's going to have a very serious effect. We're going to lose a lot of business. There's going to be a lot of unemployment. We're expecting our turnover to go down somewhere in the region between 25 to 30%.
But some doctors have hailed the ban as the health initiative of the century.
I believe that a lot of people will give up smoking. Most people will cut down.
and even more importantly, young people will not start to smoke. And these are the gains as well as protecting the worker.
Anyone flouting the law faces a fine of €3,000. Undercover inspectors will drop in unannounced, but the authorities admit they'll be relying on people power to make the ban work. Vicky Young, BBC News, Dublin. David Beckham is out of England's friendly against Sweden on Wednesday. The England captain picked up a calf strain playing for Real Madrid yesterday. He was assessed by the national team's medical staff after reporting for duty with the rest of the squad today. And we'll be back a little later with the latest on the day's headlines. But now it's time to join our news teams across the UK. Bye for now. Hello, good evening. The operation to turn a former warship into Britain's first artificial reef off the southwest is finally complete. Divers were today given the all-clear to explore the wreck of HMS Scylla in Whitsand Bay. Our reporter Marcus Raitt reports on the ship's final journey.
After years of planning, the moment finally came on Saturday when the former HMS Scylla was towed out to Whitsand Bay on her short final voyage. After a few technical delays, the waiting was over. The vessel was scuttled. The spectacle was witnessed by thousands of people from all over the southwest who flocked to the coast to watch the ship go down.
It was exciting to see it, and I think it's part of history, right?
As predicted, it didn't take long for the Scylla to sink. Once on the seabed, she was surveyed, and at lunchtime, divers were given the all-clear to explore the wreck. There are many access points into the wreck, and at its shallowest, it's only 10 feet deep, which means divers of all abilities will be welcome. And staff from the National Marine Aquarium in Plymouth will be closely monitoring marine life on the artificial reef, which is expected to attract thousands of divers from all over the world.
Around 70 former workers at the ITV Digital Call Centre in Plymouth have won claims against the firm at an employment tribunal. The tribunal found bosses didn't properly consult with staff over the redundancies in 2002. 3 workers also won their case for unfair dismissal after refusing to sign agreements to waive their employment rights. The amount of money they'll get will be decided tomorrow. Contracts have been signed to rebuild schools in Exeter at a cost of around £100 million. All 5 of the city's secondary schools will have new buildings, and a new primary school will be built at Wanford to replace the Bradley Rose schools. There's anger and disappointment tonight over news that a Devon Centre for the Blind is to close. The Manor House Rehabilitation Centre in Torbay has helped thousands of people who've either lost their sight or whose sight is deteriorating. This report from John Ayres.
James Risdon is registered blind and has been since birth. He went to Manor House to enhance his computer skills, which helped him with his master's degree. His computer has a braille display which enables him to use it in much the same way as anybody else. He believes it's a big blow to lose the centre.
It deals with a great range of people, from people like me who have been blind from birth to people who have just lost their sight in adulthood, who were either in employment or looking for employment, and it gave them all the social skills and the daily living skills to be able to focus their energy on getting into higher education or into employment.
Just 2 years ago, the Duke of York helped the Royal National Institute of the Blind celebrate its 60th anniversary at Manor House. It's a far cry from today, when it was announced that it will close in July. A new service will be opened up in Taunton in September with the Somerset College of Arts and Technology. The RNIB say it was a difficult decision to close Manor House, but it follows feasibility studies and falling numbers in people using the service. They insist it's not a reflection on the staff, who've done an excellent job. They say their new service will focus more on people from the southwest who won't have to endure very long journeys or lengthy stays in residential centres. The closure of Manor House is a big blow for the 29 staff. They'll be given the chance to transfer or be made redundant.
People in Devon and Cornwall who persistently refuse to pay fines for offences like vandalism or theft could face an unusual punishment. Refusal to pay up could see fine dodgers having their cars clamped. The new policy signals a zero tolerance on offenders in the region.
Work has started today on a £5 million improvement scheme at the Royal William Yard in Plymouth. It'll include resurfacing the road, pavements and dockside and installing street furniture. Flybe has today announced it's considering flying from Exeter to Paris and Amsterdam next year. The airline may also add Newcastle as a route from Exeter this winter. Scheduled flights to Alicante, Malaga and Faro started today. There are plans to start the nation's first ever wolf breeding programme in North Devon. 6 rescued wolves are being kept at the Combe Martin Wildlife Park. Their keeper, Sean Ellis, known as Wolfman, now hopes to release the creatures into the wild in Poland. Claire Casson has the story.
A cry to locate exactly where the wolves are. Sean Ellis has spent years researching how they live. His understanding of their communication and body language has enabled him to build up a unique rapport with the animals.
The idea is really just to set down, make ourselves as small as possible, keep the body posture low and really just keep the eyes nice and soft, blink and look away from them, putting them totally at ease with members of the pack that they feel comfortable with.
The wolves here have come mainly from private collections, and although they're in an enclosure, they're still largely wild animals. The really important thing for Sean is to try to keep them that way. And that's because the plan is, within a few years, to release their young into the wild in Poland. The more tame they become, the less likely they are to survive.
Claire Casson reporting there, and Sean Ellis is one of many nominations we've had so far in our competition to find the South West local champion. And if you'd like to nominate someone, then you can write to us at BBC Broadcasting House in Plymouth, email us at Spotlight, or you can fill in a nomination form on our websites. Now, let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast now, and it'll be warm and dry again with decent periods of sunshine, top temperature 16 degrees Celsius. And that's it. We'll be back tomorrow, but now back to Fiona. Bye-bye. And the main news tonight, an official at the British Embassy in Bucharest has been suspended after he alleged that British immigration officials were letting Romanians and Bulgarians into the UK on forged documents. The claims increased the pressure on the Immigration Minister, Beverly Hughes. She said the claims would be investigated. There are plans for a new elite police force to crack down on organised crime. And Sir Peter Ustinov, actor, writer, raconteur and UNICEF ambassador, has died, aged 82. Newsnight's getting underway over on BBC Two with an interview with the Immigration Minister, Beverly Hughes. But from all of us on the 10 o'clock team, good night. In a tribute to the double Oscar-winning actor Sir Peter Ustinov, there's another chance to see an interview recorded in 1998 when Tim Sebastian spoke to him about his life and career. That's Hard Talk tonight at 11:30 p.m. on BBC News 24.
Hello! It was a pretty good day to be beside the seaside, across southern parts of the UK at least. Jersey managed 11 hours of sunshine in all. You can't get much more than that at this time of the year, and at Saunton Sands we managed to reach 16 Celsius. That's into the low 60s Fahrenheit. We weren't also fortunate, of course. There was a lot of cloud around across the UK, but significantly through the afternoon we managed to see brighter skies creeping across from the near continent into that southeast corner. That's the shape of things to come later tonight and during tomorrow, that cloud continuing to melt away, so better prospects for sunshine, at least across southern areas. There will be some holes in the cloud elsewhere tonight, and if it does break up for any length of time, you may see a touch of frost, but I think that's going to be the exception rather than the rule tonight. A little bit of mistiness around as well. It's turning quite misty at the moment across East Anglia, so the odd patch of fog, the odd patch of frost, as I say, most places managing to escape. And a very different start to the day tomorrow for many southern areas. Most of southern England, parts of the Midlands, Lincolnshire and East Anglia should start the day with blue skies. There'll be holes in the cloud elsewhere too to get some sunshine around, but tending to fill in a little bit, I think, across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland. But even so, generally a brighter day than we saw today here, and it should stay dry everywhere. That sunshine becoming more extensive, extending into Wales, across most parts of the Midlands as well through the course of the afternoon. There won't be much warmth in that sunshine though towards those North Sea coasts, particularly across East Anglia, where a pretty brisk wind's going to pick up through the afternoon. The North Sea isn't very warm at this time of the year.